And I can tell you that they're wrong.
Everybody thinks it's situational.
Yeah.
I'm different. I'm different.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. We'd like to welcome you all here. We'd like to get started. And please that you're here for our speaker today, who is Per Schofers. You might say, well, how do you spell that? Well, it's right there on the board. Okay? Per is from Sweden. Okay? He's Swedish. Swedish is his first language. He speaks it perfectly. He speaks English near perfectly. A little bit of an accent, okay? But you pronounce this Per Schofers, and he grew up in Sweden. He went to school in Sweden. He's an engineer. He has a bachelor's in engineering, and he also has an MBA. And he got those at the University in Stockholm. Is it the University of Stockholm? Is that what you call it?
Well, there's the Stockholm School of Economics is one of them.
Okay.
And the other is the university. Yeah.
Anyway, so but you know he's worked a lot in Europe. He's worked a lot in the U.S. He's been president of several of his own companies, and then you know he got interested in pricing. You know how do you optimize prices? How do you decide what to charge to customers? And he's always had an interest in that, and so he decided with his own new company, Atenga, which is 8 years ago. They were doing something else for a couple of years. And he said, no, my passion is in pricing. And so 8 years ago, they started just doing pricing studies for companies. Now, these are studies that some of the big companies would pay, you know, $500,000 or more for. And, you know, two of his biggest competitors are McKinsey and Deloitte & Touche. You've heard of them. And they paid them, you know, $500,000 for a study to do what pricing. And he has figured out how to do what they do for a lot less, and how to do it for small businesses and small, medium-sized enterprises. So it's really exciting. They've got 12 employees. He's the president, and he does this for companies all over. He lives in Southern California, but he comes up here and he has some clients up here. And he happened to be up here this week, you know, visiting a client. I said, okay, we got to have you come and speak here, because he has done a conference. He spoke at our PKF, which is our affiliate of international accounting firms that we belong to, and he came to our national conference and he spoke and was well received. And in the newsletter that went out to distributors and manufacturers, he was the keynote article. So PKF, which is our national association, really thinks highly of him. So when I found out all that, I said, okay, we've got to get him to come here. So it is really a special treat to have him come, because this is the guy that you want to know how to price, you know, how to do it. This is the guy. Now, let me just say, Atenga has had like over 400 contracts where they've helped companies figure out how to do pricing. And 98.5% of those, you know, are willing to give references and testimonials as to the validation of what he's done and how it works. And so I told him, give us some examples. You don't have to shy away from describing how this works, because you know this is kind of new to a lot of us. It's like, how do we do this? So anyway, we'll turn the time over now to Per.
Thank you.
Give him a warm welcome.
Well, thank you, Mark, for the invitation, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to talk about pricing a little bit in the light of commoditization. So you have it from a lens of commoditization, because they are related. They're highly related. I'm also going to give you a whole slew of examples, and they're all going to be from different industries, but pricing works the same way no matter what your industry is. It also works the same way whether you sell products or services. And in fact, one of the things that we learned is that while industries work generally the same way, companies are vastly different, okay? And so what I want you to do is, as you look through this presentation, think about what I'm going to tell you, how it applies to your particular circumstance, even if the examples are not exactly in your industry. So this guy knows something about pricing, okay? And he's saying that pricing power is his one top criterion for investing in companies, okay? So what is the flip side of pricing power? Can anybody guess? Wheat. No, it is commoditization. It is to be commoditized, okay? A commoditized product is so similar to other products in the marketplace that there's nothing else that drives the decision to buy than the price, okay? So you need to look at this from almost like a tug of war between pricing power and commoditization. So that's what I'm saying. I'm going to look at this from the lens of commoditization. And I do this because almost every company has some unique products and some commodity products, or some unique services and some commodity services. And but this commoditization and loss of pricing power is not inevitable ways or effects of running a business. There is ways to fight back and at the same time charge higher prices, increase sales, and keep your customers happier. And I'm going to talk about that solution. And I'm going to talk about what the results are. So let's talk, starting with the problem itself. Commoditization happens in every industry. And when an industry has become commoditized, it stagnates. This is a global problem. It happens in every industry, in every corner of the world. And you consider the cell phone industry. It used to be highly profitable. Companies like Nokia and Motorola became global market leaders. Then they become commoditized. Nokia went through this restructuring. Motorola sold off the handset division. And then suddenly this comes along. Okay? And the decommoditizer, they establish new levels of convenience, new levels of pricing, and new levels of profits. And now, of course, this is about to happen again. So we as business leaders, we have to fight back. We have to fight commoditization. If not, we've given up. Okay? So how do you fight back? Well, what you need to do is to understand your customers better. This is a lot more difficult than you think it is. And in fact, what you do with that customer insight, and how do you use it to gain back your pricing power? You innovate. In fact, the general rule is that you price for profit. That gives you the resource to innovate for growth. But innovation doesn't always have to be technical. It can also be how you sell and what you sell. But let me tell you what not to do. Just before I started the Tenga, I did a short stint as marketing VP for a storage company called Exanet. And it was the ludicrous way that the company priced that really got me into this. Okay? Here's what they did. They examined competitors' last price list. Okay? Last year's price list. They guessed the current cent per gigabyte. Okay? They then added a fudge factor. okay, based on gut feel.
They carefully calculate it.
Yes, exactly. And then they discount it to any price to get the deal. You know? Does anybody recognize this method? Okay. So the result here was that $60 or $65 million invested in the company, 10 millions in asset sale to Dell. But like I said, pricing can also give you pricing power by the way you sell. So for example, jet engines used to be, the price of jet engines used to be an obstacle for sales because the engines are just about as expensive as the plane itself. So what happened here is that the engine makers figured out a way to, instead of selling engines, charging per hour of use. Very simple, really, but it made a huge difference. Okay? But there's more. And let's continue to examine where loss of pricing power comes from. The most common reason is to see the marketplace as homogeneous, not to segment your marketplace. Okay? There are homogeneous marketplaces, but there are very few of them. Once you can segment your marketplace, you can target different segments where you have pricing power. Let me give you an example. Gas. Can you think about anything as commoditized as gas?
No.
Okay. Well, gas prices are higher when the gas station is close to a freeway on-ramp. Okay. Gas prices are higher when the gas station are in the middle of nowhere, taking advantage of your lack of alternatives. In fact, between Los Angeles and Vegas, there's about a 50-mile stretch with only a single gas station. Gas there is about $10 a gallon. Okay? Very few people fill up there. Okay? But of course, the few who does, is enormously profitable for this gas station. And the people who elect to pay those prices do so because it is still more convenient and cheaper than actually running out. Okay? So, location, therefore, is a way to gain a little bit of pricing power if you're in the gas station business. Another very common reason for loss of pricing power is that the company's sales force doesn't know how to deliver the value proposition of the company. And this happened when salespeople and sales management becomes order takers. Okay? Often because they don't know the value proposition. They don't know how to defend that value proposition. Or because the company has, in fact, given up. But in some cases, fixing pricing power can be so simple as a child's play. I'm going to tell you a story of sticky labels. Okay? This looks like a pretty normal price list, doesn't it? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Okay. It has the SKU. It has size of labels, labels per roll, and it has the price. And the price is even in bold. So how do you select? Well, you look at the cheapest one and select the cheapest. You first go to price, then you look at what the size and the other attributes are. So let me show you a different price list. And this company actually sells exactly the same labels, the same brand as this company. And this looks very different when you examine it. First off, You have product info, you have a value proposition. You have more product info, and you have the SKU. But where's the price? The point is, there is no price, okay? So here, the customer needs to first decide what product to decide to buy, based on value proposition, based on technical spec. And when you've done that, you look it up in a different list. And here's the SKU we just looked at, okay? And by doing this, you've effectively taken price out of the decision criteria. Okay? Very simple. Just a change like this typically can make 2 to 4% revenue difference. Okay? Because you don't have that bias towards selling, bias of your customers to buy the cheapest stuff. Okay? And because you have these two documents, you can also charge higher prices. And loss of pricing power also happens when companies don't know their customers' willingness to pay. That's very, very common. They underprice. They leave money on the table. I'm going to talk about companies selling electrical drills to illustrate this. The company used one of the most common pricing methods. We call it cost plus. You take your cost and you add some fixed margin. And this landed the 3 drills the company had at $90, $95, and $120. Okay? What this creates a perception in the minds of the prospects or the customers. And these perceptions are as follows. Drill 1 and 2 are so close in price, so they must be the same. And why should I then pay $5 more to get the same as I get with the cheapest one? It also says that drill 3, the gap to drill 3 is very large, so it's a big gap. I'm not going to spend all that extra money to get the premium product. And this led to it's led to 3/4 of the sales was drill 1, the one with the lowest dollar margin, okay? And then the company did something, it's called a cross-price elasticity study, where you can find how people migrate between different products from the same vendor or different vendors based on price. And based on that study, they did one price change, $95 to $107 of drill 2, okay? This completely changed that perception landscape, okay? Suddenly, drill 1 looked too cheap, okay? And the gap to drill 3 was not very much. So you say, oh, only $13 more for the best, okay? And result, drill 2 became the best seller, okay? From a monetary standpoint, revenues increased with 14% and gross margin with 20% from one single little price change. And finally, companies lose pricing power because they don't know how to defend their own pricing. The salespeople are not trained to set up the customer conversation in such a way that pricing is taken off the table. They are not trained to control the conversation to keep it off the table until the time is right. And they don't know how to defend the uniqueness the company has. In fact, we're in the middle of a job for a company that you all would know because you've seen the TV ads. And the company goes out with a message of discount, 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 okay? And they have 1,000 salespeople, and they're discount like crazy, you know? They give away 50% regularly, okay? And because these salespeople believe in the company's own marketing. But when you ask customers, they don't want discounts at all, you know? So discounting is completely unnecessary. And here in September, we're going to start re-engineer their sales process, you know? But since commoditization, loss of pricing power, happen in every industry, so does fixes. And this starts with a deep dive into that perception landscape of the marketplace. Perception of value, benefits, and willingness to pay. So price optimization is actually a lot more than just price, because price doesn't live in a vacuum. And it's about creating a platform of hard data, replacing that gut feel. Okay? And when you do, but sales increases, and so does profits too. And I'm going to illustrate this deep dive, talk about a CRO. And a CRO is a service organization. Biotech companies often outsource their whole clinical trial and FDA approval process to these CROs. Now, it's important, I'm going to talk about process outsourcing, not any technical outsourcing at all, okay? And here's what we found. These are purchase drivers. The most important purchase drivers from the marketplace is therapeutic experience, okay? It's up there. And the least one is the location of the CRO. Now,
what's a CRO?
it stands for a contract research organization. What they do, as I said, is to manage clinical trials for, and there are many of these companies. But then when you look at how the company saw their purchase drivers, it's completely different. Okay? And you see that what their customer says being the most important, therapeutic experience, they didn't think was important at all. Okay? And they do think, and why is that? Well, the company, because it's only process, it's the same process no matter what the drug is, no matter what the therapeutic area is, okay? So they didn't think that was important, while customers did. And geographic location, why is that so high in the company's mind? Well, it's very simple. Whenever they lost the deal, they call back the prospect and they said, why didn't we get your business? And the company only has one location, and that's in San Diego. So the client wanted to get off the phone, the quicker the better. So it was always very convenient to say, you're not in Virginia or you're not in the Bay Area, because there's nothing you can argue with it. You know? So that's what happened. Okay? But it gets worse. Here's the experience the company has. I know you can't read it, and the point is not to read it. The point is to say that the company had worked in more than 30 therapeutic areas. And this is what the management team thought. Okay? 3/4 of them agreed they had experience with cancer drugs. or the clinical trial for cancer drugs. And only a single person knew they had worked with, I can't read myself, fertility drugs and so forth. Okay? And then when you add what customer thought, it's all over the map. And this is for the most important purchase driver. This is amazing. Okay? And this fix for this, again, was like child's play. You create bundles. You have a cancer bundle, you have a pain management bundle, you have a, bundle. It's the same process, but just by using the terms and the illustrations for a particular therapeutic area, the customer understood it. Very simple. And in fact, 9 months into this, bundles had increased business with about 25%, and they also found that they could charge higher prices for these bundles. So this deep dive into the marketplace is not only about perceptions. It's also about getting a better understanding of this decision landscape. But companies often say, I know. And of course they do to some extent, but never as detailed and as correct as it should be. And why is that? Because customers lie. Okay? Whenever you speak to a customer, they would sometimes lie. More often than not, they will tell stories or withhold information because they want you to think you're a commodity. And the only way you can sell is lower your price. Because they know that next time they buy from you, they want a better deal. Okay? We all do the same. You buy a new car and you say to the salesman, well, I'll pay $3,000 extra for the red one. No, you don't. So. But let me tell you a story of another company who takes a very different approach. I was visiting the pricing VP of a biotech company, about $1 billion company. Phone rang, and he gestured to me that I could stay. It was a conversation about a target, and he completed the conversation. He turned to me and he smiled and he said, it was my CEO who called. We negotiated the pricing target for you next year. He wanted 30 million. I said, I can give you 25, and we settled on 28. So the lesson here to learn, okay, is that a couple of things. They had a process of pricing, and they had specific targets for pricing. In this case, 3% of revenue as profit to the bottom line. And this was not a one-off, of course. It happened every year. What could you do? What would you do if you had that at the bottom line to your company every year? I'll tell you what you will do. You will spend it essentially on becoming more competitive, on marketing, on product, service development. But let's get into the nuts and bolts here. I'm sure you all know the definition of price elasticity. Okay? It is the percent change in sales volume divided by the percentage change in price. And this is how you teach it. It's been taught in business school. Okay, a straight line. It doesn't happen that way. And that gives you a demand curve that looks like that. The reality is a lot more complex. And that's because of the psychology of pricing. Because we as humans are all different, though, and because the circumstance of each sale is different, we can not only manipulate this, but we can also measure it. Okay? And there's two ways that is important when you measure these choices people do. Okay? And that is it may be too expensive. Okay? There's a variety of reasons. Okay? It could be that you simply don't have the funds, but more often than not is that whoever is selling it hasn't delivered a value message that is in concert with the price. And it can also be something else, and that is too cheap. Okay? If somebody offered you gas, since we're on that sort of train, for 10 cents, would you buy it? 10 cents a gallon, would you buy it? I wouldn't. I think it will damage my car. Okay? And so let me tell you a little story on that. And I was in Vegas. I needed a haircut. And I passed this sign. And I didn't stop. And I passed this sign. And I didn't stop. And in fact, I got my hair cut where there was no sign at all. And I paid the $20 or $25 that I expect to pay for a haircut. Because the price of whatever you're selling is the most important message of quality. And maybe I was right. Okay. But some companies inevitably say that their customers make a technical evaluation and buy the cheapest product that meets the spec. And of course that do happen. But more often than not, there is a level of judgment involved. Okay. So even if there is a technical evaluation, things like this and more will be considered. So there's two things then that we need to consider. Is it too expensive or is it too cheap? And I'm going to show you an example on this. This is sort of technical. So if we consider here on the x-axis we have price, on the y-axis we have people who will not buy. Okay? And if we start with too expensive, if the price is 0, nobody will say it's too expensive, okay? But in this case, as we go up to $500, everybody will say it's too expensive. Then we have the flip side. Is it too cheap? Okay? And we say, if the price is 0, 100% of the people say it's going to be too cheap. And so we get a charge going that way. All right? Which really means that your customers are going to happen here. Nowhere else. And in this case, demand optimized price is $175. Does it make sense to you? All right? And there's one more thing in the psychology of pricing. And we call this price wars, price walls. Okay? And I'm going to illustrate this with a company that sells car accessories. They were coming out with a new, this is actually a radar detector. They were coming out with a new radar detector. And marketing wanted to price it at $4.99, finance at $5.99, and sales at $1.99. Okay? So then how does these prices track on the demand curve of this particular product? That's how it looks like. Okay? So sales were pretty good knowing where the demand maximized price was, and the other two groups were not. Once we have this demand curve, we can calculate the relative revenue curve, and we'll see something different. Okay? We'll see that nobody guessed the revenue max, and in fact, here is the price wall. If you go for this product from $4.99 to $5.01, you have lost 66% of your revenues. Okay? Quite good to know, you know? But of course, once you have this curve, setting prices becomes easy. You can choose the demand optimized price. You can choose the revenue maximized price or the profit maximized price, depending on your business strategy. So how do you find out? Well, the answer is price-specific market research. And there's a couple of things that is important in this case. You have to reach out to the entire marketplace. Okay? And this consists of your customers, your prospects, and strangers. And strangers are people who never heard of your company. Okay? And I'm going to illustrate the importance of that with another little case study. And for some reason, we just stick in the biotech space here. This company manufactures drugs used in those clinical trials. And they make small batches of drugs. And this particular company had a preference of making batches that was 2,000 liters. And they came to us with a pricing problem. And they said, 2,000 liters is what everybody wants. And the rest of the market is just peanuts. Okay? We find that 2,000 liters were preferred by a quarter of the market. Okay? How could this be? Because they also said, we talk to our customers all the time. And they confirm they want 2,000 liters. And that's exactly the point. They went to market with a message of 2,000 liters. It resonated with about a quarter of the market. Okay? And then they asked that quarter, what do you want? We want 2,000 liters. You know?
Just make them feel good.
No, it's because you go to market with a certain message. That will resonate with a portion of the market. Those becomes your prospects and your customers. And if you then only ask those, it's just going to mirror back what you told them. So as we wrapped up, the CEO wanted a plan from the manufacturing VP next Monday on how to make other batch sizes effectively. And of course, this was late on a Friday. So, and research needs to be anonymous. If it isn't, it will be like that sales conversation where customer lies. And the way to safeguard anonymity is to take your product or your service offerings and abstract it into attributes. For example, if you ask, but it's more than just hiding the brand. So again, we own cars and gas and stuff here. If you ask what people say or think, their perceptions about a German-built car that is supposed to be fun to drive, most people we know we're talking about a BMW. But in fact, if you ask about cars in general, where you have country of origin, you have different kinds of messages related to the cars and the type and so forth, you can hide who you really work for. And I'm going to give you another short personal story of the importance of anonymity. I assume most of you know what Spotify is. Okay, it's a music service. If they're successful, they're going to be the premier music service, online music service. And I'm what they call a premium member. I pay $10 a month for having access to whatever 26 million songs or something. And I got an invitation to take a survey that was very long, very detailed. I think it took 45 minutes to take this survey. Okay, the result is that I have a pretty good grasp of their future product plans. Okay, because it wasn't anonymous. Okay, and the issue here, it doesn't matter that I know it, but of course this also went out to their competition. You know, no good. All right. So, I think one more case study, and I think this is the last one. And it's about decision landscape again, and to replace that gut feel, okay? This company I'm going to talk about is a training company. They sell training software. They've been in business for about 25 years. And they were very surprised to find that there were actually 4 different segments in their market. They thought the market was homogeneous. There was a price-sensitive segment. There was a segment we called customizer because they wanted customization. There was a brand-sensitive segment, and there was a service-sensitive segment. And each segment has its own decision profile and willingness to pay. So looking at what we call a rainbow chart, you can see that each segment have their value drivers and decision drivers in different priority. Okay? Price segment, obviously price is top, no surprise. But they don't care much for customization. Customizer segment is the opposite. They want customization, but they don't care very much for the brand. And the other 2 segments have their own profile too. Now, and then looking at willingness to pay, you can see that price segment, the red one, is more price sensitive than the green one, which is the customizer segment. And in fact, you see that demand for the price segment is maximized at 200, whereas the customizer is maximized at 500. Okay. So once you have this chart, it becomes dead easy to set prices for the 2 different versions that we're talking about of the product. Okay. And in fact, there was 4 different versions. So what we could do is that we can create a price list where we have the optimized price, but we also have a restriction. Okay? And this restriction is more important, really, than the unique feature. Okay? Because it helps guide people to the right segment. And Microsoft is enormously poor in doing this, because they try to do the opposite. They take something that you really want in your bundle of whatever Windows version you want to use, and make that the restriction. The result, you feel nickel and dime. Okay. And another interesting discovery here was the company wanted to sell high, like everybody wants. And what we found was that training managers, they care a lot to improve decision making by employees. But if you then look at what executives want, they want employee development. So as they were trying to sell high, their message that resonated with training managers did not resonate in the C-level suite at all. So just by changing the messages, they got attraction at that C-level suite, and the new product after a year was at 150% of the plan. Okay. But there's 2 more things, and I've touched a little bit on them that goes into price optimization. And I don't have time to talk about them in detail, but I'm going to show you a couple of slides on it. All right, that's my 2. One is sales transaction analysis. Once you can analyze your sales transactions and you can find things that correlates between your sales and all different variables, your customer sizes, locations, maybe the salesperson, maybe the channel, all different things. And that always give you questions. You know, why can we sell profitably here but not here? Okay. So sales transaction analysis generate questions that when they are answered, give you answers. Sales process development is to take all this data and turn it into a sales process. And what we find more and more is that people come to us with pricing problem, and in fact they have a sales problem. And then it's a problem where their salespeople, they don't know how to prepare. Okay, They don't know how to control the sales conversation. They don't know how to sell without discounting. And very important, they don't have a sales management infrastructure in place to hold salespeople accountable. They think they do, but they don't. So, summarize. Optimized pricing is about process, okay, and execution. Companies who focus on price optimization, on the average, grow twice as fast as peer companies who doesn't. They're also twice as profitable, and as a result, they have 4 to 5 times shareholder value. As managers, as managers, it is our role to fight commoditization, where we lose our pricing power. Customers lie. There's psychology in pricing, and the solution is third-party anonymous research, plus sales transaction analysis, plus sales process development. And that, my friend, is a wrap. So what are you going to do now? Thank you. Any questions on this?
Well, I kind of have a question, which is something that I've noticed a lot,
Mhm.
is that, sometimes like the businesses will hear, they'll set a high price and then tell the salespeople to just get it and blame the salespeople when they can't.
Yeah. Okay.
When, maybe the product is, doesn't have the value they perceive it
Yeah.
has, the pricing just comes out of the air.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've been to I've been in many companies, and when is pricing set? Almost always when the brochure is being done,
Right.
or when you go to a trade show and you suddenly have an ad hoc pricing meeting and everybody comes in and have opinions.
Right.
Okay.
And then you hire a sales force and you say, this is your pricing,
Yeah.
and you actually don't listen to the salespeople when they tell you what your problems are.
But the salespeople always price low, because that makes their life easier.
It's not really true. See, that's
Okay.
what everyone assumes,
Mhm.
is that salespeople. But there are salespeople who sell value.
Yeah, they are. They are. I mean, I'm talking obviously of generalities.
Right.
They're always people who stand out. But so what is your question really?
I guess I was just asking about, how you were saying the problem is going to be in your sales, people in your sales process, which
Mhm.
I do agree with.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of it, to me, is disconnection between
Yes.
management and salespeople, that the salespeople are in the trenches and have a lot of information that never makes it upstairs.
That's true, but a lot of the information also is, and it is always skewed. Every project we've done, the results are, when we present it, is that some things are confirmation they knew,
Right.
but was never really quantified, and there's always new discoveries, always, and sometimes just having that confirmation that what you, I mean, like Mark said here in the beginning, we have 98.5% of our customers are willing to be our references, and one of the two who's not willing to be is because we came up with something that didn't fit with his gut feel. We told him the truth and he didn't want to hear it. So that's because he was just looking for confirmation, nothing else. So anything else?
Do you feel like you should use pricing early in the conversation with the prospect to weed out what their expectations might be?
There's two things you should do. You should set the expectation initially in the conversation that you're not going to sell on low price. You're gonna, you tell the customer, we are not Walmart. We are not the low price leader. We give you value. And if it is a customer he's going to either say that's fine, and you go on with the sales conversation, or it's going to say it's all about price, and you don't want the people who are sticky about price anyway.
Right.
Because they're also going to be your most difficult customers.
Get what you have.
Yep.
You're also gonna be less loyal.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Because someone will always have a lower price.
Yeah. They absolutely. So
Let's speak about the dilemma that the pricing for my service, and it's a service-based industry, it's not a product-based industry.
Yep.
Where the expectation of all the prospects are, they want you to work on success fees only.
Mhm.
Let you take all the risk, and you as the supplier take all the risk and get compensated from the results.
Mhm.
But yet you have to stay in business and you have to get revenue and profit in order to continue to do that. I determined a price level that I felt was a minimum fair level
Mhm.
for the work that I do. And then when I get a person who says, I only want to pay on success fees only, I'll say, how about a program where you pay me a retainer